right now, the reason to create a sports car, a roadster, as the first stage of this, is because it attracts attention, or what?
Oh, so good, great question. Because people often misinterpret why we have created a sports car. It's sort of like that I feel that there was somehow a shortage of sports cars for rich guys or something like that, and that was the problem.
That's right.
Any new technology is expensive when it starts out. And you can point to pretty much anything. Because the first thing that engineers are trying to do is make it work. And then when you make it work, then you optimize and you optimize and you optimize. And if you look at the early days of computers or cell phones or almost anything, even the early days of gasoline cars, they used to be toys for rich people. And then you combine that with the fact that we were just a little startup. There's just no way that we could afford $1 billion to make a giant car plant that would make hundreds of thousands of cars a year, because that's the kind of volume you have to get to make cheap cars. So we had both a volume problem and a new technology problem. You have to reach scale and you have to work the bugs out of the system, and you want to make your mistakes at a small scale.
I would add another one to that whole set, which is just agency. Like people who just solve problems without even being asked to solve the problem. They identify the problem, they go solve it. They don't necessarily even have to update you every step of the way. They're not asking silly questions, and they're just coming up with solutions. Because building a startup is an infinite set of problems that are being thrown at you. And there comes a day when you realize, I can't even look at every problem, let alone think about it, let alone solve it. It's not even possible.
Yeah.
So at that point, as Vinod Khosla famously said, the team you build is a company you build.
Yeah.
And so at that point, the team you have built is the company you have built.
Right.
And your ability to solve problems is based entirely on how many problem solvers you have below you. If you have somebody who takes 10% of your time in management and solves problems, well, you can only have 10 of those people working with you. But if somebody takes 5%, you can have 20 of those people. So people who are low ego, take agency, solve problems, don't have to thump their chest about it, and are just professionals. They just get stuff done. I think like in AirChat and AngelList, like when we were building the teams, I used to think of it like a Navy SEAL team, right? Everyone is just really good at what they do. They know their job, they do it, they don't complain, they're not egotistical about it, and if they have to constantly be corrected, or they have to be led around by the nose, or have to clean up after them, or have to question even their judgment, it's not gonna work out.
And one of the things that Jonathan and I say in our book is that you should hire the divas. Right? Now, by the way, if you read any management text, it says don't hire the divas because they're nothing but a pain in the ass. By the way, they are. But the people who are the divas who believe, right, are the ones that will drive the culture of excellence, and they'll drive you to that excellence. Steve Jobs is a diva. I worked with Bill Joy, who was my colleague for many years. He's an example of a diva. And I mean this in the most flattering way. They expect a lot, they drive people hard, they're controversial, and they care passionately. Right? If you find those people, you're probably going to work for one. So be nice to.
So you talked about having to be a bit conservative, or the pressures to be conservative as the CEO of a big company. You have to be conservative on Twitter. You have to be, conservative with your investors. So having to innovate, to succeed in this fast-changing world, how do you resist those pressures, and what can CEOs like you do to resist those pressures?
Whether you're going to start a business or you're going to join a business would relate to values. And pausing for a little bit of time to know who you are and what you stand for. Lots of things are going to come your way. There's going to be an emergency tomorrow, something's going to come up and I'm going to have to deal with it, or when you're in these jobs, you're going to have to deal with it. And you need some sort of a foundation to stand upon. And pausing to remember, what are our values, my personal values, and how does my response here relate in that context? If you don't have that foundation, you're going to be moving around trying to figure out one instance at a time what to do, whether it's a question about risk taking or how you handle a crisis or something else. So it sounds a little bit hokey, I suppose, to pause and write down or think about, what you want your end story to be. But I think it's valuable. Pretend that you're at your retirement celebration someday. What do you want them to say about you? What legacy do you want to have left? And predetermine before you start that that's going to be your outcome.
The most underrated quality of all is being really determined. This is more important than being smart. This is more important than having a network. This is more important than a great idea. The hardest thing about starting a company is the level and the frequency of bad stuff that happens to you. And most people that are good in really other ways eventually just get killed. The company gets killed by stuff going wrong. So much about being a successful entrepreneur is just not giving up. When we have funded people who have a great idea, perfect background on paper, and a great product and still failed, it has usually been that they're insufficiently determined. So I think this is the most important, non-obvious skill of a founder. Of course you need a good product and a good market and to be smart, but that's really obvious. The degree to which being like a 3 or 4 standard deviation outlier on determination is a required skill of a CEO is not something that was obvious to me when I started.
If you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. Go all the way. It could mean not eating for 3 or 4 days. It could mean freezing at a park bench. It can mean jail. It can mean derision, mockery, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of your endurance, or how much you really want to do it. And you'll do it, despite rejection and the worst odds, and it will be better than anything you can imagine. If you're going to try, go all the way. There's no other feeling like that. You'll be alone with the gods, and the nights will flame with fire. Do it. Do it. All the way. All the way. You will ride life straight to perfect laughter. It's the only good fight there is.
And I think that it's possible that these next generation of companies, the ones that you and others will found, can get to 90% market share models, right? Because you move so quickly. That success model has not slowed down, right? You read the press and everybody goes, oh, well, there's this big company and that big company. There's never been more opportunity than now to create these companies. Because the barriers to entry are so low, the tools are so powerful, and the need is so great. And I would strongly encourage you to not succumb to the anxiety that everyone else seems to have, but rather to carefully go through the capability of the disruptions all around you and figure out how you can solve a new problem. Simplify your life in this case. Focus on the things that you care about. Family, relationships, changing the world, making money, whatever it is. It's okay. But get focused on that. Don't be distracted. Most people that I know, especially in your generation, spend too much time on things which are distracting rather than focusing. And often they're things that they really can't change anyway. Stop worrying about things that you can't control and try to make your own luck. Now you say, well, how do I make my own luck? Remember that almost everything that happens to you happens because of the people that you're with. Right? Every single success that I've had has been because I was surrounded by these incredibly interesting and successful people. But force yourself to take advantage of all of this. Don't just sit at home. Live your life to the fullest. The most successful people work hard and play hard, which means you should not watch television.
And most people, when they have a choice of moving forward or playing it safe, play it safe. But I think General Douglas MacArthur said there's no security in life, only opportunity. Life is very perverse in a way because the more we seek security, the less we have it. And the more we seek opportunity, the more we have security. Helen Keller said this beautifully. She said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. That the tendency, she said in the earlier parts of this statement, she said the tendency to seek security is the low road to failure. That courage is absolutely essential. And one of the things that I used to think that if you were really courageous, eventually you got to the point where you weren't afraid. I'm going to tell you something, that if you're not a little bit afraid, at least 3 or 4 nights a week, you're not trying hard enough. If you're not falling on your face over and over again, if you're not trembling when you go to sleep with your heart pounding, then what is happening is you're not trying hard enough. You're living too far within your potential. That all really successful people live on the outside edge of what they're capable of. And it's always a little bit scary on the outside edge because we all have feelings of uncertainty. We all have fears. We all have doubts that hold us back. But the brave person is simply the person who moves forward and keeps taking the chance. And you cannot imagine a successful person without courage. You cannot imagine a successful person without the courage to face and confront their fears and to move forward. In my experience, the fear of failure is the greatest single reason for failure in adult life.
There has been a suggestion that because of pricing and design, Apple tends to appeal to kind of a smaller elite rather than that sort of mass customer base. And so I guess once and for all, is it your goal to overtake the PC in market share?
I can tell you what our goal is. Our goal is to make the best personal computers in the world and to make products we are proud to sell and would recommend to our family and friends. And we want to do that at the lowest prices we can. But I have to tell you, there's some stuff in our industry that we wouldn't be proud to ship, that we wouldn't be proud to recommend to our family and friends. And we can't do it. We just can't ship junk. So there are thresholds that we can't cross because of who we are. But we want to make the best personal computers in the industry. You go and price out our competitors' products, and you add the features that you have to add to make them useful, and you'll find in some cases they are more expensive than our products. The difference is we don't offer stripped down, lousy products. You know, we just don't offer categories of products like that. But if you move those aside and compare us with our competitors, I think we compare pretty favorably. And a lot of people have been doing that and saying that now for the last 18 months.
I'll just go ahead and plug right off the bat. It'll be in the show notes. The video you did with Jimmy, where you hung out with him, you were in his studio, get all kinds of this awesome information out of him and about YouTube and about the way he approaches making videos. But not all of it actually works and applies to tech. So I'll just give a quick example. You might say something like, you really want to be introducing people to a storyline within the first 10 seconds of a video. But that bit of advice might not work if you're trying to review a product, for example, and you have to talk to the person considering buying the thing immediately. They would leave if you started telling a story, and it has nothing to do with the product.
So I personally actually disagree about what you just said about tech videos.
Interesting.
I actually think you can introduce multiple narratives, introduce new stories when it comes to the product. It's just not the same way. It's not you telling a story, but if you said like, there's two things I really like about this and one thing I really don't. All of a sudden you've just introduced something that I'm waiting for.
I see.
That's a story. What's the thing Marquez doesn't like about this? And I'm waiting for that. And so I think actually a lot of the advice that he's giving is, the way I take it is more of this just general storytelling advice. And if someone's, you know, you're introducing a product and there's no tension, there's nothing new that's going to happen, then I might not stick around.
The advice that you can get from a creator about YouTube, about the platform, about how to make better videos, doesn't necessarily always apply. You might say something like, introducing people to a storyline within the first 10 seconds of a video. But that bit of advice might not work if you're trying to review a product, for example, and you have to talk to the person considering buying the thing immediately. They would leave if you started telling a story, and it has nothing to do with the product. So I'm curious, when you guys talk to a bunch of different creators in different genres who have different pieces of advice that they give, do you find that there's more overlap or almost no overlap?
So I personally actually disagree about what you just said about tech videos.
Interesting.
I actually think you can introduce multiple narratives, introduce new stories when it comes to the product. It's just not the same way. It's not you telling a story, but if you said like, there's two things I really like about this and one thing I really don't. All of a sudden you've just introduced something that I'm waiting for.
I see.
That's a story. What's the thing Marquez doesn't like about this? And I'm waiting for that. And so I think actually a lot of the advice that he's giving is, the way I take it is more of this just general storytelling advice. And if someone's, you know, you're introducing a product and there's no tension, there's nothing new that's going to happen, then I might not stick around.
It was kind of natural for me to just work hard, again, because I saw how hard my family worked, my parents, or even like just my grandma when she would come visit, she would never sit still. She's always either in the yard planting some kind of fruit or vegetable or making some type of food or something for us, just always working. And then of course with my mom and dad doing the same thing, because obviously they learned from that. So for me, I always felt like I always have to be moving towards something. I may not know exactly what that something is, but I got to keep moving. So to me, the thing that changes over time is that something becomes more clear. That vision of, oh, this is what I ultimately want to be, because what is this whole thing about, right? We're spinning on this globe around a sun in the middle of space doing what? Like, what is so we can fix teeth, or so we can, I don't know, play baseball, or whatever it is that you choose to do in your life, right? Something has to have a purpose. Like there has to be bigger vision, a bigger goal. And so for me, my work-life balance has always been work, 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 work. And now as I've gotten a little bit older, it's become, okay, well, you can work your life away and not know what happened. Blink and you're 60, right? How many people do that? How many people just go wherever the wind blows them, right? So I started becoming a little more conscious of that, obviously from an early age too, right? I mentioned that in college. I'm like, okay, well, you got to start thinking about this, but this doesn't go away, right? You always have to think ahead. Again, I always worked hard. It's just defining what you want to work at, okay? When you're young, you have to define your career because it's what's going to determine your lifestyle, right? So you have to work hard toward that. Once you're in your career, you have to work hard in your career. I don't care if you're in sales, if you are a computer scientist, if you're a podcaster, you're a dentist, you got to work hard, right? And you always got to try, obviously, to be the best and do your best. And, you know, and honestly, in my opinion, I feel like you have to bring your own kind of brand or the way you do it, right? To whatever you do. Work as hard as you can, but have a focus, right?
If you have lived through some horrible suffering or injustice and you survived, just realize you are now in possession of one of the greatest of all treasures, contrast bias. You now have the ability to be truly happy because you know how bad it can be. Someone who lives this sheltered life will never know any of that. They do not know what it is to be happy because they don't know what it is to suffer. And when you do that, then all of a sudden the lemons turn into lemonade. All the suffering, all the trauma, all the unfairness, your upbringing now becomes a pro, not a con. And you got two choices in this life. I think it was Einstein, or a great physicist, who said, you know, mankind has two great choices to decide whether the universe is a friendly place or a hostile place. This is kind of my non-physicist version of that. Perceive your past trauma and suffering as something you have now turned into a great good. You now know what it is to be happy. Only the person who truly has faced hell and death knows what it is to be alive. Somebody you take who got cancer, was told they would be dead in 6 months, miraculously persevered, fought through, and survived. Oh, that person's truly alive. That person's truly alive. And as they walk through, they see all the people just taking for granted their health, their happiness, and thinking, they don't even know what they're missing.
As an investor, I've backed about 40 companies worth $1 billion or more each, 30-something at the seed or Series A. So that's things like Airbnb, Airtable, Coinbase, Figma, Gusto, Instacart, Stripe, Square, Dior, Rippling, Notion, and others. I think the second takeaway was really the power of ambition. The main reason Larry Page or Sergey Brin would get upset with you, or Eric Schmidt, they kind of ran the company together, would get upset with you is either, number one, you weren't thinking big enough. You'd go to a product review and you'd say, oh, I have this idea for this $100 million market. And they'd say, why isn't it a $10 billion market? Like literally they would say that, you know, they'd always push you on thinking bigger. Or why are you happy with 1 million people using it? Why isn't it 100 million people using it? And then number two is they pushed very hard on innovation and what makes the thing that you're working on very special or different. It really forced some very clear product thinking and some very big thinking and ambitious thinking. And then the third is when you're an employee at a hyper-growth startup or company, things will generally work out and you shouldn't worry too much about yourself. And if your boss suddenly, if your coworker suddenly becomes your boss's boss and all these things shift, a lot of people start to worry about themselves. What about my career and what will happen to me? But the company's growing and changing so rapidly that there's lots of opportunity. And something that was sort of my third takeaway.
If you're listening, if you, especially if you have 0 videos on your channel, your first video is not going to give views, period. It's not. Your first 10 are not going to give views. I can very confidently say that. So stop sitting there and thinking for months and months on end and just get to work and start uploading. Like, all you need to do, this applies to people who have not uploaded videos but have dreams of being a YouTuber, is make 100 videos and improve something every time. Do that. And then on your 101st video, we'll start talking, like maybe you can get some views, but you know, your first 100 are gonna stop. There are very freak cases like Liza Koshy or Emma Chamberlain who have really good personalities and it doesn't take them as many videos. And it's just like people who are 7'5" and making the NBA. Like, yes, there are freak cases you can find, but for the average person like us, you know, who don't have these exceptional personalities and, you know, backgrounds in filmmaking, just make 100 videos, improve something each time, and then talk to me on your 101st video.
Well, the improve something each time is the tricky one. How do you improve something each time?
The second one, just, I don't know, put more effort into the script. The third one, try to learn a new editing trick. The fourth one, try to figure out a way that you can have better inflections in your voice. The fifth one, try to, study a new thumbnail tip and implement it. The 6th one, try to figure out a new title. There's infinite ways. That's the beauty of content creation online. There's literally infinite ways, from the coloring to the frame rate to the editing to the filming to the production to the jokes to the pacing to every little thing can be improved, and they can never not be improved. There's literally no such thing as a perfect video.
The thing I would say is, when you grow up, you tend to get told that the world is the way it is, and your life is just to live your life inside the world, try not to bash into the walls too much, try to have a nice family life, have fun, save a little money. But life, that's a very limited life. Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact, and that is everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it, you can influence it, you can build your own things that other people can use. And the minute that you understand that you can poke life and actually something will, if you push in, something will pop out the other side, that you can change it, you can mold it. That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it. I think that's very important. And however you learn that, once you learn it, you'll want to change life and make it better, because it's kind of messed up in a lot of ways. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again.
Most of the Stanford graduates have very high expectations. And you deserve to have high expectations because you came from a great school. You were very successful, you're at the top of your class, obviously you were able to pay for tuition, and then you're graduating from one of the finest institutions on the planet. You're surrounded by other kids that are just incredible. You naturally have very high expectations. People with very high expectations have very low resilience. And unfortunately, resilience matters in success. I don't know how to teach it to you except for I hope suffering happens to you. Boy, this is going to cause a lot of pain and suffering. And I mean that in a happy way, because you want to refine the character of your company. You want greatness out of them. And greatness is not intelligence. Greatness comes from character, and character is informed out of smart people. It's formed out of people who suffered. And so that's it. And so if I could wish upon you, I don't know how to do it. For all of you Stanford students, I wish upon you ample doses of pain and suffering.
Like, you have an opportunity to write the story you want to have. You can write any story that you want. You just have to start writing it. If you want to have an asymmetric life, do hard things, do your thing, do it for decades, and write your story. I thought I'd end with a catalyst that I had in my life, probably the biggest turning point. So I rode crew in college, and as I mentioned before, and I had a nickname in rowing, which was Dreamweaver, and my last name's Weaver, and so my friends call me Dreamweaver, and like, what a great name, right? Because, I mean, like, who doesn't want to be Dreamweaver? So the person who gave me this name was a guy named Monty Razor, and my sophomore year, he was a senior, and like, I didn't make the boat, as Logan said, and I wasn't very good. He was amazing. So, but anyway, I could still picture, like, I would walk into the rowing room and Monty would just say, "Dream," like this, and like, I would just get this surge of energy, and like, the name just stuck. Everyone started calling me Dream. A few years after I graduate, I'm sitting down and my friend calls me on the phone and says, "Hey, you need to sit down," which nothing ever good comes of that first intro on a phone call. And he says, "Hey, your friend, Monty's gone. He was killed in a plane crash. He was 23.
And I think the reality is just, not quite so glamorous. There's there's an ugly side to being an entrepreneur. And also, just more importantly, what you're actually spending your time on is just a lot of hard work. Sam mentioned this, but you're basically just sitting at your desk, heads down, focused, answering customer support emails, doing sales, figuring out hard engineering problems. So it's really important that you kind of like go in with eyes wide open.
after they do a marathon, because he's really big in endurance sports, and so his kids are too. And so whenever they finish, a lot of them pulled up a 0, which I really like, and it means nothing left in the tank. And he said, I just want you, I don't care if you win. He's like, I just want you to have nothing left. And I think about that as like the goal. So the goal is to have nothing left. And I think that on the micro level and on the macro level. Like if every day, like my favorite days are the days that I get into bed and I'm fucking exhausted, but proud of the work that I've done. I have nothing left. I've left it all on the field. And so like that's the goal. The other stuff, society chooses to measure me by, but when I measured myself that way, it distracted me and I didn't enjoy my life. But just living that day as many times in a row as I can until I die is my plan. And at the end, on the macro, being able to hold this up and be like, I got nothing left. I'm used up. But until then, I will continue to try and be useful. And so I like all three of those statements, and they, to me, kind of embody a lot of the values of 1 of 0, which is not just doing only what you can do, but doing things that you didn't know you could yet.
I always say this, the most driven individuals, they live a life for many years and certain times without balance. Everybody strives for balance, balance, balance. And in order to be that obsessed with something over and over again. So if you say something that was missing, but it was actually a gift, was his lack of balance. You know, there were times, now, you can't be the best at something and try to balance everything else around your life. There is going to be times where things are going to be out of balance. It just is. You know, so many individuals talk about that you need more balance, you need more balance, you need more balance. You don't find balance, you create it. And it's different for every individual out there. What the balance I've created may be completely different than the balance you've created. And there's certain times in your life that the scales are definitely going to be weighing towards one side more than the other. In the early part of Kobe's career, it was about basketball and winning, about basketball and winning.
If you want to be successful, I would encourage you to grow a tolerance for failure. But the thing about failure is this: if you fail often enough, you actually might become a failure. And that's different than being successful. And so the question is, how do you teach someone how to fail, but fail quickly? And to change courses as soon as you know it's a dead end. And the way to do that is we call it intellectual honesty. We assess on a continuous basis whether something makes sense or not. And if it's the wrong decision, let's change our mind. And you know, a lot of people say CEOs are always right and they never change their mind. That doesn't make any sense at all to me, especially when it violates the first principles of what we want the company to become. An innovative company that invents amazing things, that solves problems for the world that it sometimes didn't even know it had. If you want to do that, then you have to cultivate that tolerance for risk-taking, and you have to then teach people how to fail, but fail quickly and inexpensively. And so innovation requires a little bit of experimentation. Experimentation requires exploration. Exploration will result in failure. Unless you have a tolerance for failure, you would never experiment. And if you don't ever experiment, you would never innovate. If you don't innovate, you don't succeed. You'll just be a dweeb. That's it. Any other questions?
I've built a lot of my success off finding these truly gifted people and not settling for B and C players, but really going for the A players. And I found something. I found that when you get enough A players together, when you go through the incredible work to find 5 of these A players, they really like working with each other because they've never had a chance to do that before. And they don't want to work with B and C players. And so it becomes self-policing, and they only want to hire more A players. And so you build up these pockets of A players, and it propagates. And that's what the Mac team was like. They were all A players.
The cover story was God in Business. Bill was the #1 illustration. Bill took that business from his father-in-law when it was doing $250,000 a year, and he now has over half the business in Utah in his field, about close to 400 million. He built it by thinking about the customer. And the truth was, he was competing with Sears, he was competing with Levitt's, was a huge furniture retailer in the past. He was competing with everybody. But all he thought about from the moment he got up in the morning was, how do I take care of my customer? And that wins.
Three main approaches to SEO, and they're not separate approaches, they all go together. So kind of think of it like the three legs of a tripod. So they all support, the thing that's holding up at the top, which is whatever it is you're trying to be found for. So if you're a speaker, or you're a designer, if you're a coach, whatever that thing is. Now, those three legs, there is content. So literally, what words are you putting onto your site? What other types of content as well? So words and text are not the only type of content. You have videos, you have images, you can embed audio files. And then the other two categories I call speed and also popularity. And of those three categories, we're probably going to spend most of our time talking about content, because that's what's purely in your control today. You don't have to rely on other people for content. I mean, some of you may argue otherwise, but if you put your effort, your time, and energy into this, you could create content today without needing help from other people. Whereas the technical side, which is the speed part, you need your website to start loading fast enough. And so speed and the technical infrastructure of your website definitely matters to Google.
If you're Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my rich dad refused to pay me. He said the paycheck was one of the most damaging things you could take in your life. He says the moment you take a paycheck, you're an employee, and that's the mindset. So my rich dad never paid me. It drove my poor dad, government employee, nuts. You gotta pay people, you gotta pay people. And rich dad was not saying that the paycheck was bad. He says you didn't want to be a slave to money. So as an entrepreneur, if rich dad folded, I just started another company. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need anybody to take care of me. If my government doesn't like me, I move to another country, because they need entrepreneurs there. Entrepreneur is a mindset first, a skill set, and rules. And depending upon whether you're an employee or a small business, the rules are different. The mindsets are different, the skill sets are different.
Millions of square feet now of real estate. You've got a huge and growing inventory of items that you keep in stock.
We do whatever.
And you've got thousands and thousands of employees now.
Yeah, we have over 3,000 employees and over 4 million square feet of distribution center space. And those are things I'm very, very proud of, because with that distribution center space and half a dozen distribution centers around the country, it allows us to get product close to customers so that we can ship it to customers in a very timely way, which improves customer service levels. That's what we're about. If there's one thing Amazon.com is about, it's obsessive attention to the customer experience, end to end. And that's what those distribution centers are.
But you're not a pure internet play.
It doesn't matter to me whether we're a pure internet play. What matters to me is, do we provide the best customer service? Internet, schminternet, that doesn't matter.
Well, but it does matter to your investors to know whether they're investing in a company that
No, they should be investing in a company that obsesses over customer experience. In the long term, there is never any misalignment between customer interests and shareholder interests.
Well, that's the same argument that somebody at Walmart would make as well, wouldn't they?
I don't see why not. I think they should make that argument.
So
it's a correct argument.
Okay, so you'll open as many square feet of space, physical space, as you have to, hire as many employees as you have to
service customers, absolutely. And we'll do it as rapidly as we can.
That's a very cost-intense proposition.
The energy it requires to start doing something is way more than the energy required to continue doing the thing. And that the beginning of doing anything results in the lowest amount of reward, both internal and external, than when you've been doing it for ages.
Like, this is the hardest part. And so if you can just make it through this, everything else is downhill. It's not that the things that the dragons you're going to slay aren't going to get bigger. They are. But you become so much more equipped to slay them back. And you have so many more allies. You have people in the stands cheering for you. You have the audience. You have all of these other things that are behind you. But at the beginning, it's just you with a stick against a bear. And so it's not even like the size of the hardship. It's just also the resources and how few of them you have, and how so much of the beginning is literally burning the one thing you have, which is time. Because you have no leverage. You don't have the money to pay other people to help you. The skills that you develop along the way, like Steve Jobs learning calligraphy that then became Apple fonts that, transformed how we type. Those early days, that little trench winning in the weeds, oftentimes gives you these huge advantages later on because you have more context than anyone else. And so rather than lament them and hate the fact that you're going through it, remembering that these will be arrows that you put in the quiver that you're going to be using to slay the future bigger dragons.
My best advice is to really work hard to clarify what your purpose is and be able to articulate that, be able to communicate it in a simple sentence. And the reason that's important is as you bring people into your company, I think the most important question you ask them is, why are you here? Why do you want to join this company? And if you hear that purpose back, if you hear that passion around that purpose, it makes everything a whole lot easier. Any skill can be learned and taught, but passion cannot.
There's no substitute for hard work. The best time you're ever going to have is when it starts out just you, and it'd be great if it grows into a wonderful, big, profitable company. But you're never going to be happier and more satisfied than you are in the first year or so of getting your business going, because you do every single thing. You sweep up when everybody goes home. You're the first one in. You plug in the coffee pot, so when your people come in, they have hot coffee and can get straight to work. You work through lunch, set an example for them. But there's no substitute for hard work. People say luck, yes, but the harder you work, the luckier you get.
It's always, I believe, that small is beautiful. And this financial crisis, it's a disaster to big companies. This war in 21st century, I think in last century, it's big is better. You have a big, factory, big amount, and, everything's big, is good. This century, in the 21st century, I always believe small is beautiful, because it's not how fast your machine is. It's not how many equipments you have. It is how quickly you can change yourself to meet the market. Because the information time, internet, technology make a difference. So the world IT in the last century is designed for manufacture. And this century, IT is designed to help the consumers. So I think this is a disaster for big companies, century disaster for big companies, but it is a great opportunity for small business.
Think about like the cable company. Like when you have a monopoly, I mean, how much do you really have to give them? It's not like they can go anywhere, right? So the worst customer service, the worst products are usually the ones that have a monopoly position, because there's no competition. There's no reason to push or challenge or do better, other than just goodwill, I guess. And so I think when times were good, we get lazy, because if you leave, there'll be someone else to give us your business. It'll be fine. I think in hard times where the stresses are higher because there is less business, I think it forces us to actually go back to the basics of what it means to run a good business. And the best customers are the loyal ones, the ones who will stick with you through thick and thin. And so when you engage in relationship building, when you act in a trustworthy manner, when just like I gave the tribal example before, when we as customers get a sense that you would sacrifice your interest to take care of us, we'll give you our love and our loyalty and pay you a premium. When you go back to Nordstrom's and you have a sweater from Bloomingdale's and you're like, "Can I return this, please?" They'll take it back. And the reason they'll take it back is because it's fine. So they'll lose money on the sweater, but they made you incredibly happy. This is a decision they made. So I think one of the things that it's revealed right now is that we have to bring our A game, that we don't get to be lazy anymore.
We're losing market share and the Mac is losing money. Our only hope is the Apple II, which is stagnating because of its soon-to-be obsolete DOS. Users are already rigging their machines to run with the CP/M operating system that's been built to run on Intel. I can't put it more simply than this. We need to put our resources into updating the Apple II.
By taking resources from the Mac.
It's failing. That's a fact.
It's overpriced.
There's no evidence that it's...
I'm the evidence! I'm the world's leading expert in the Mac, John. What's your resume?
You're issuing contradictory instructions, you're insubordinate, you make people miserable, our top engineers are fleeing to Sun, Dell, HP, Wall Street doesn't know who's driving the bus, we've lost hundreds of millions in value, and I'm the CEO of Apple, Steve. That's my resume.
But before that, you sold carbonated sugar water, right? I sat in a fucking garage with Wozniak and invented the future because artists lead and hacks ask for a show of hands.
All right, well, this guy's out of control. I'm perfectly willing to hand in my resignation tonight, but if you want me to stay, you can't have Steve. Settle him out. He can keep a share of stock so he gets our newsletter. He'll have to sever his connection to Apple. I'm dead serious. I want the secretary to call for a vote.
I fucking dare you.
You have done an outstanding job over the years of cultivating the press, and by that I mean manipulating them, because none of them, and none of their editors, publishers to this day know that you forced it, that you forced the board, even after I told you exactly what they do, which is exactly what they did, unanimously.
I don't have any trouble remembering that, John, because of it being the worst night of my life. And I forced the vote because I believed I was right. I still believe I'm right, and I'm right. No, I bled that night, and I don't bleed. But time's done its thing, and I really haven't thought about it in a while. I absolutely understand why you're upset, and I want people to know the truth too.
It's time.
Got it.
You're to end me, aren't you?
You're being ridiculous. I'm gonna sit center court and watch you do it yourself. Then I'm going to order a nice meal with a 55 Margot and sign some autographs.
Jesus Christ.
You want some advice, Pepsi generation? Don't send Woz out to slap me around the press. Anybody else, you, Markla, Arthur Rock, anyone but Rain Man. Don't manipulate him like that. Whatever you may think, I'm always going to protect him.
Come on, Steve.
That's what men do. You can't start late.
You need to work, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night. 7 days a week, all the time. And I mean, if you do simple math, you say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. The final thing I would encourage you to do is don't just follow the trend. Now is the time to take risk. You don't have, you don't have kids. As you get older, your obligations increase. So and once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
Basically what I did was I somehow found these other like 4 lunatics. 3 of us were college dropouts, 1 was a high school dropout, and 1, I don't know, he just like quit his job. We were all super small YouTubers, and we basically talked every day for 1,000 days in a row and did nothing but just like hyper study like what makes a good video, what makes a good thumbnail, what's good pacing, like how to go viral. We would just get on Skype every morning, and like some days like I'd get on Skype at 7 a.m. and I'd be in the call until like 10 p.m. and then I'd go to bed, I'd wake up and I'd do it again. We'd do things like take 1,000 thumbnails and see if like there's a correlation to the brightness of the thumbnail to how many views it got.
Imagine a world where it's just you working solo and you work 12 hours a day every day for like a year.
and you're just grinding, you make a mistake, you learn from it, you grind, you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you do that for like a year. And then imagine a different world where you have 4 friends who are also equally grinding in something similar. Friend number 1 makes a mistake on Friday, he teaches the other 4 people. Friend number 2 makes a mistake the next week, teaches everyone. And then like you're all learning from each other's mistakes. You're all constantly studying 24/7 and downloading each other. Like after a year, you're like 2 years ahead of the guy who was just solo.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up. Right, and I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable, but you just kind of bounce back and you learn, and nothing is impossible. You just have to kind of keep running through the walls.
A lot of people come to me and they say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I go, oh, that's great. What's your idea? And they go, well, I don't have one yet. And I say, well, I think you should go get a job as a busboy or something until you find something you're really passionate about, because it's a lot of work. And I'm convinced that about half of what separates the successful entrepreneurs from the non-successful ones is pure perseverance. It is so hard. You pour so much of your life into this thing, and there are such rough moments in time that most people give up. I don't blame them. I mean, it's really tough, and it consumes your life. I mean, if you've got a family and you're in the early days of a company, I can't imagine how one could do it. I'm sure it's been done, but it's rough. I mean, because it's pretty much an 18-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week for a while. So unless you have a lot of passion about this, you're going to not survive. You're going to give it up. So you got to have an idea or a problem or a wrong that you want to right that you're passionate about. Otherwise, you're not going to have the perseverance to stick it through. And I think that's half the battle right there.
How would you like every time somebody met you, they said, every time we meet, we haven't even done business yet. It's exceptional. I said, we haven't even done business yet. See, some to you won't give people your best until they prove to you that they're going to buy. Somebody called, they're just getting, hey man, I'm 6 months out, I'm going to buy, when next year. Hey, you've never committed to me to buy something. I didn't need you to. You know what I knew? I knew how you viewed other people that were in my space. You know what I was going to prove to you, whether you do business or not with me? I was going to show you how I rep this new deal. I'm different than anybody else you've seen. So how are people going to think after they meet you? You know what I did? I got a lawn chair. I looked over, everybody's sitting inside reading the newspapers. $19.99. Grab a lawn chair, I go out to the gate. Put it right in the middle of the gate. I sat there all day long. Burnt. Every time somebody pulled in, how you doing? Andy Elliott. Sales or service? Service? Nice, come on. I'll show you where it's at. By the way, Johnny, amazing and service advisor over there, you can go see him. By the way, can I give you my card? For some reason, if they give you a bill, it's too high, I don't know, anything. If you need me, you're tired of waiting, you need a cup of coffee, you just call me, I'll be right over. So many of those people found their way back to me. You know why? Those are my people. They weren't ready today, but they were going to be ready at some point, and I was going to be their guy. I wish you guys would realize that everybody, everywhere you go, is your next customer. I treat everybody that I run into that I want to make an impact in which they'll never forget me for the rest of their life. That's what I want to see you do from now on.
This is an order to cease and desist all taxi and livery operations.
You arresting me?
Not at this time, sir, but if you continue in violation of city ordinance, we'll be back.
This is bad, TK. This is a We're cease not ceasing. and desist. We're not desisting either. It threatens up to... Yeah, I see. There's penalties. Up to $5,000 per instance of Uber Cab's operation. Instance meaning each ride. 90 days in jail per day the company remains in operation past the order. That's me in jail?
Yeah, that's you in jail, man.
Anything you could sign so it's you instead of me?
Jesus, no. I mean, I can't. No.
I'm fucking kidding, Kill. Don't worry about it. But I am more Emerson than Thoreau on that shit. I do not want to go to jail.
Hey, everybody! You heard about this already? I want you to know this truncheon to the crooked establishment, this object of fear, I want you to know this is not our death warrant. This is our goddamn birth certificate, okay? This means we are alive in this world and we are growing the fuck up. It's a sign of validation. And it's a sign that we are scaring the taxi and livery industry and the transportation agency and the status quo shitless. This is validation of our standing as disruptors.
Yeah, if you can be in a bad mood for no reason, then you can be in a good mood for no reason, which means that if you can do something that's amazing and still have a shit day, it means you can do something that sucks and have a good day, which means the entire excuse around, I don't want to do all these hard things because as a proxy, it makes my mood sad, is ridiculous, because it means that we are ultimately in control of how we want to perceive the work that we do. And so I think that is ultimately the most freeing thing that you can do in terms of how you can equip yourself to get through those harder periods.
So it's one of the most important messages I have for entrepreneurs is that failure should inspire you to get smarter. And unfortunately, our school system says if you fail, you're stupid. That is not true. You know, we learn from our mistakes. Mistakes are opportunities to get smarter, be humble, and take a look at something. So anyway, the cash flow board game, just like Slack, was a failure. So I had to write Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a true story about my rich dad and my poor dad. And suddenly I went on the Oprah show and suddenly I became famous.
You can choose a life of ease and comfort, or you can choose a life of service and adventure. Which one of those, when you're 90 years old, are you going to be more proud of?
So, but it's interesting that you thought about it that way in sort of a systematic approach. Like,
exactly.
This is not dumb luck.
No, I mean, it was like they say 10,000 hours in math or something. We
Yeah.
probably put in like 40, 50,000 hours. I mean, we're talking like every day, all day, like literally nothing. We had no friends outside of the group. That was your life. And
I'm
like,
actually rereading that book right now, that Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, that talks about that 10,000 hours principle. It totally applies to what you did. 100%. I mean, like it sounds like you were just all day, every day, and which makes sense. And what do you have now? 90 million subscribers?
Well, we across everything, we're closing in on 200 million subscribers.
So when we see a kid with a lemonade stand, it's different than when we see a vending machine selling lemonade, even if it's exactly the same product, because the story around it is what people are paying for. So when I meet small business people, all I ask them is not what's their balance sheet, but what's their story. Why should I pick you? Why do I care about what you're doing? And if you start giving me all this inside baseball statistics about why you're 2% better than some other competitor, I'm already glazed over, because that's not part of the way I see the world.
Here's what I would tell you. If anybody's listening to this and you're not married, or you're not with somebody that you're going to be married to, I would tell you this. Dude, go psycho in the gym. Go psycho. Become in elite shape. Elite. And build your freaking mindset up to be absolute a savage. Unbreakable. Don't maintain. Okay? Never quit. Don't maintain. You have no idea how dangerous you can become and get better every day. So a lot of people are just maintaining. Like, I'm maintaining what I was doing yesterday and I'm doing better than most. So that's good. Screw that, dude. I want to destroy that dude yesterday. If you meet me next week, okay, and you met me today, next week you're going to be like, damn, dude, you freaking leveled up since last week.
Right.
That's what you're going to say. You know why? Because I'm going to do it. So I would tell you, if you're younger, like, dude, every day recreate. Every day get in better shape.
Well, information technology is making it easier and easier to do these transactions externally. It's becoming much easier to communicate with people. Gig economy, I can send you small amounts of money. I can hire you through an app. I can rate you afterwards. So we're seeing an atomization of the firm. We're seeing the optimal size of the firm shrinking. It's most obvious in Silicon Valley. Tons and tons of startups constantly coming up and shaving off little pieces of businesses from large companies and turning them into huge markets. So what looked like the small little vacation rental market on Craigslist is now suddenly blown up into Airbnb. This is one example.
That's a great example.
But what I think we're going to see is, whether it's 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, high quality work will be available. We're not talking about now driving an Uber. We're talking about super high quality work will be available in a gig fashion, where you'll wake up in the morning, your phone will buzz, and you'll have 5 different jobs from people who have worked with you in the past or have been referred to you. It's kind of like how Hollywood already works a little bit with how they organize for a project. You decide whether to take the project or not. The contract is right there on the spot. You get paid a certain amount. You get rated every day or every week. You get the money delivered. And then when you're done working, you turn it off and you go to Tahiti or wherever you want to spend the next 3 months. And I think the smart people have already started figuring out that the internet enables this, and they're starting to work more and more remotely on their own schedule, on their own time, on their own place, with their own friends, in their own way. And that's actually how we are the most productive. So the information revolution, by making it easier to communicate, connect, and cooperate, is allowing us to go back to working for ourselves. And that is my ultimate dream. Even when I run a company and I have employees, I always tell those people, hey, I'm going to help you start your company when you're ready, because I think that's the highest calling. Maybe not everybody will get there, but it would be fine if we were even working a 10-person company or 20-person company is way better than working in a 1,000-person company or 10,000-person company. So this idea that we're all factory-like cogs in a machine who are specialized and have to do things by rote memorization or instruction is going to go away, and we're going to go back to being small groups of creative bands of individuals setting out to do missions. And when those missions are done, we collect our money, we get rated, and then we rest and reassess until we're ready for the next sprint.
Customer obsession. I think that's the most important thing. If you can, and it gets harder as you get bigger. When you're a little tiny company, say you're a 10-person startup company, every single person in the company is focused on the customer. When you get to be a bigger company, you've got you've got middle managers and you've got all these layers, and those people aren't on the front lines. They're not interacting with customers every day. They're insulated from customers. And they start to manage not the customer happiness directly, but they start to manage through proxies like metrics and processes, and some of those things can become bureaucratic. So it's very challenging. But one of the things that happens is the decision-making velocity slows down. And I think one of the reasons that happens is that people, all, say, junior executives inside the big company, start to model all decisions as if they are heavyweight, irreversible, highly consequential decisions. And so even two-way doors, you make a decision, it's the wrong decision, you can just back through the door and try again. Even those reversible decisions start to be made with heavyweight processes.
Constantly seek criticism.
Yeah.
A well thought out critique of whatever you're doing is as valuable as gold. And you should seek that from everyone you can, but particularly your friends.
You know, there are a lot of things that are outside of your control. A lot of external circumstances will determine the success of your idea, whether the market timing's right for this new kind of service, or whether people, whether a customer, like the economy's right for your kind of service, right? Whether you meet the right people who will finance your company. Many external circumstances are outside of your control and but will affect the outcome, and you have to be okay with that.
Optimism has a place, but I think even more so for the first-time entrepreneur, you need to be pragmatically pessimistic. What I mean by that is, you need to define all of the worst-case scenarios in terms of financial loss, time loss, etc. Look at what you will learn if that happens, and accept and come to terms with that before you ever start. If you don't do that, and you go straight into battling the world, trying to conquer the world with rose-colored glasses on, the first time you hit a major hiccup, you're going to become really demoralized and you will quit.
It's very rewarding when you work on something you think is going to make a big difference. And yeah, it's a little bit harder, but I think the passion that one might bring with it brings so much more energy to that you're more likely to succeed.
Do something you're very passionate about, and don't try to chase what is kind of the hot passion of the day.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and it's totally true. And the reason is because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, if you're not having fun doing it, you don't really love it, you're going to give up.
He stood for innovation. He stood for the simple, not the complex. He knew that Apple should only enter areas where we can control the primary technology. All of these things are still deep in our company. There's still things that we very much believe. The strive for perfection, for being the best, for only doing the best products, for staying focused. The fact that despite this table being so small that you and I are sitting at, you could put every Apple product on it, every single one that we ship today, and yet this year our revenues will be, approximately 180 billion. There's probably no other company on the face of the earth that could say that.
And so obviously you don't want to work all the time because your 20s are your 20s. But I do think you want to work harder than most people think you should. You tend to benefit from it later. Life is super unfair. Sometimes you also just get unlucky. Working hard early in your career to get the leverage and the compounding effects is underrated and one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I never got.
My 8th episode of my podcast, in 17 was Stop Branding. That was the 8th episode. I probably have the exact opposite perspective now, and I'm wealthier now, so hopefully I'm right. And maybe in 10 years I'll change my mind again, but I don't think I will. Fundamentally, brand is one of the ways that you can differentiate anything. It's really just the goodwill that you have in the audience and your ability to price above a commoditized version of whatever you offer. Like that discrepancy between what a commodity sells at and what yours sells at, like that is the pricing power that brand affords you. And so with price being the single strongest lever on profits in any kind of business, having a brand becomes incredibly important if it is the strongest influencer on your ability to price. That just fundamentally shifted how I saw it.
Focused on the short term and money coming in when creating a company, because otherwise the company will die. So I think that a lot of times people think like creating a company is going to be fun. I would say it's not. It's really not that fun. I mean, there are periods of fun, and there are periods of where it's just awful. And particularly if you're the CEO of the company, you actually have a distillation of all the worst problems in the company. There's no point in spending your time on things that are going right. So you only spend your time on things that are going wrong. And there are things that are going wrong that other people can't take care of. So you have like the worst. You have a filter for the crappiest problem in the company, the most pernicious and painful problem. So I wouldn't say I think you have to feel quite compelled to do it, and have a fairly high pain threshold. And there's a friend of mine who says like starting a company is like staring into the abyss and eating glass. And there's some truth to that. The staring into the abyss part is that you're going to be constantly facing the extermination of the company, because most startups fail. It's like 90%, arguably 99% of startups fail. So, that's the staring into the abyss part. You're constantly saying, okay, if I don't get this right, the company will die. It can be quite stressful. And then the eating glass part is you've got to do the problems. You've got to work on the problems that the company needs you to work on, not the problems you want to work on. And so that's you end up working on problems that you'd really wish you weren't working on. And so that's the eating glass part. And that goes on for a long time.
So how do you